Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, enabled by digital technologies. Our meeting date is Monday, February 28th, 2022. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7:01 p.m. We wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, staff, and delegations who will participate in this meeting. Of course, as usual, I invite your decorum. I do have attendance regrets this evening from Councillor Terry Seiler. Let us move then to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those who are unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared already in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session, and if not already done, to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Let us begin alphabetically, as we often do, with Councillor Anstead. Welcome, Councillor Anstead.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. This evening, through you, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.5.1, the accounts, specifically the daycare accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's Daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anstead. Next up is Councillor Behrens. Welcome, Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Good evening, Council. I have submitted documentation to declare a conflict of interest on 5.5.1 and 13.1, as I have a grandchild attending the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center and one attending after-school programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Behrens. And next up is Deputy Mayor Kellum, and it looks like you have festive environments behind you, Deputy Mayor. So perhaps you'll tell us about that in making your declaration tonight.
See, the maid hasn't taken them down tonight, but anyway, I'll get on that for next meeting. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Good evening, Council. And yes, I would like to declare pecuniary interest on item 5.5.1, specifically the daycare accounts, as I have grandchildren that attend the child care centers as well. Perth Meadows, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants there, and then subsequently the confirmatory bylaw, which is 13.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good to liven up the background of our meeting, I think. Any other councillor wishing to make a declaration at this stage? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of that, so let's work on our virtual processes here. Tonight, I will be systematically trying to seek consent from councillors as movers and seconders to the various resolutions and bylaws that are put before us. I will do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies text chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the speaking list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors, you are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If, when I do so recognize, I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. Should technical difficulty be the cause, support, of course, will come your way from our friendly IT team, and I will, after reasonable pause, call on our next speaker coming back to you when you are next available. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I will call on you when things do seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, and then return to mute, please. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads pretty much like that. It says that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Why don't we start with Councillor Rothwell tonight? Welcome, Councillor Rothwell. Will you serve as our mover for this one?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'd be pleased to move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, welcome. Will you serve as our second?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. There's a view, there we go. That is carried. There's a view that we can see on that screen that we might want to see if we can track down. All right, thank you, councillors, that is carried. Let's move then to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 9 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? If so, please indicate in the text chat function. And I believe Councillor Rothwell is up first. Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'd like to pull item 3.8, Perth County Federation of Agriculture re-tax rate. The letter's addressed to Perth County Councils. Perhaps our county councillors could enlighten us in terms of any discussion at the county level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Any others for discussion or consideration outside of usual receipt of the consent agenda? All right. If with council's indulgence, then procedurally, why don't we turn to 3.8? Councillor Rothwell, if you'd like to offer your comments or questions, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. I think it's a matter of timing, but my understanding is that Perth County Council has approved the budget for the county for 2022, which of course impacts our discussions at budget that we've had at North Perth Council or Budget Committee. And I'm just wondering, is there any discussion that County Council had on this request from the Perth Federation of Agriculture? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Mayor Callum, did you want to offer any comments on this one, or Councillor Duncan? I'm not seeing. It looks like you're speaking,
Sorry.
but there we go.
Yeah, I was on mute there. Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Yes, it was brought to the county's attention through emails as well, phone calls, and also some members of this council also reached out to us. It was considered. There was to be, I think correctly speaking, very minimal discussion about it, and just for now to move on as per we are with our budget. Matt, do you want to offer anything else on that?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I think the same request was made in previous years as well, and Perth County Council has decided to keep the tax rate at the 25%, and I'm pretty sure that there was a letter sent to the Perth County Federation of Agriculture from the county clerk explaining council's decision.
Yes, I'll agree with my colleagues on county council. A letter was sent to the Perth County Federation of Agriculture, essentially reiterating county council's position, which is not a new position. It's a position that was taken a few years back with regards to a similar request. And so I don't foresee further action there unless my colleagues know more. I think that's largely off the table at this point. And in fact, I think there's still some budget enabling stuff that will happen imminently at the county, but generally speaking, yes, the county has adopted the budget in principle, and we're just waiting for the full effects of that to come as legislative acts at the county table.
Thank you very much for the update.
Yeah. Anyone else have anything on the consent agenda they'd like to tackle before we consider the resolution? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication of that. So I do have a resolution relating to the whole of the consent agenda that reads as follows: the consent items 3.1 to 3.9 be received for information, and the minutes of the February 14th, 2022 regular council meeting and the February 16th, 2022 special council meeting budget committee be adopted. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? And we're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That advances us on to agenda item 4. And for this purpose, we have 2 delegations tonight wishing to present information and or make requests of council. First, council will hear from the social services team from the city of Stratford on the subject of homelessness and the current platform for mitigating and managing homelessness in our community. A reminder, of course, councillors and to our watching public, that the city of Stratford serves as the consolidated services manager for social services in our area, including North Perth. Available tonight with us, as I understand it at least, and I've seen at least 2 of the 3 faces, are Kim McElroy, who is the Director of Social Services, Alex Burgess, who's the Manager of Ontario Works, and Kelly Stone, Supervisor of Social Services, and a person often with boots on the ground in North Perth, for which this mayor is quite appreciative. I will allow Ms. McElroy to manage presenters from this point and yield the floor to her and her team. Welcome. Kim, as usual, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So nice to be back to this meeting again today. And thank you for allowing us to speak on this very important topic this evening. Unfortunately, one of the fallouts from this pandemic is the increased numbers of unsheltered homelessness we are seeing. Not only are we seeing this issue and is it gaining attention locally, it is at the forefront of service delivery and planning of every consolidated municipal service manager across the province. We are fortunate in this consolidated municipal service management area to have a wonderful collaborative working relationship with our municipalities and policing services to bring a human lens and for the needs to help move our citizens from homelessness to permanent housing. I'd like to thank North Perth and the OPP. I believe Inspector Burrows is on the line tonight as well, for being here with us. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Alex Burgess, who will talk about how we deal and how we work with the people in a coordinated response to unsheltered individuals.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and councillors for having us tonight. So as mentioned, we have seen an increase in unsheltered homelessness and homelessness kind of across the spectrum throughout the county over the last 2 years. So I just want to start really quickly. In the slides that are attached to the minutes or to the agenda, there is our local definition of homelessness that we use, which is adopted from the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. So there's 4 typologies of homelessness that we're speaking to. So there's emergency sheltered, those for provisionally accommodated, so they have no security of tenancy. Those for at risk of homelessness, and what we're going to be discussing tonight the most, which is unsheltered homelessness or absolute homelessness, or what is known as sleeping rough. So as we've seen in North Perth specifically, we have seen an increase in encampments within the North Perth area, mostly in and around Listowel, over the last few years. Encampments are often present in more remote areas of the community. So as we look at homelessness, there's many factors that go into it. It's not a very simple problem that does not have a simple solution to it. So unsheltered homelessness is quite often exacerbated by factors for the individuals experiencing homelessness, such as untreated mental illness, increased risk due to substance use, a lack of suitable housing options, the decreased affordability we've seen in the housing market over the past few years, and specifically due to COVID, a lack of informal housing options such as couch surfing. But at the same time, it can also be problematic for members of the community due to the disruptive behaviors that sometimes come with encampments. There could be vandalism, excessive garbage, or human waste as a result of it. There could be a disruption to or trespassing on private property. And there's also urban camping, which can cause a disruption to businesses in the downtown core. So as Mayor Kasenberg mentioned, we are the Consolidated Municipal Service Manager for the county, including North Perth. There is a lot of misconception when it comes to emergency shelter in our community, so I did just want to address that quickly. We do operate a housing-focused emergency accommodations program, so it's not your typical bricks and mortar shelter. We utilize local motels for individuals and families who are in need of emergency shelter. I do just want to note at this time, unfortunately, there are no emergency accommodations available in North Perth. We do have to bring individuals down to Stratford, but we do offer regular transportation back and forth to the community to assist with housing search related activities. And then for youth, so those aged 16 to 24, there is Stratford Perth Shelter Link, which again is located in Stratford, but does offer services throughout the county. So when it comes to unsheltered homelessness, there's 4 parts to it that we really want to focus on. That's the coordination and collaboration amongst the agencies that are part of this massive system. It is a large system which involves all facets: justice, police, social services, addictions and mental health agencies, the health sector. There is a proactive outreach and connection of services that occurs. Then when it comes to unsheltered homelessness specifically, there's cleaning, maintenance, and support. And then what we're always trying to do, which is homelessness prevention, to prevent individuals from ever becoming homeless in the first place. So the first place I'm going to start with is what the role of social services is. So we do offer several different services throughout the agency, including homelessness prevention and housing stability services. As mentioned, our emergency accommodations program. We also have proactive outreach to our unsheltered individuals, which we'll discuss more in just a moment, and provision of basic needs and financial support through our Ontario Works program, as well as our Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative program, and housing allowances available through our housing division. So beginning with coordination and collaboration. So the biggest piece that we really want to mention today is that if you ever come across an individual sleeping rough, we always ask that you contact us at the Social Services Department. Our number's listed in the presentation as well, but it's 519-271-3773, and we ask that you call extension 200. And just advise the staff member that answers that you're reporting an encampment. What we will do is we'll take the appropriate information, including the location, ask for a brief physical description of the site, the number of individuals, or a brief description of the individuals. And if you have photos at times, you may request those just to have an idea of exactly where we're going. We're not asking that you go and take photos of individuals, especially without their knowledge, but if you do have them or you have them available, we would ask that you send them just to help us to locate. What we'll do is, if there are further details required, we will follow up with you, or if it is on private property, we'll reach out to request permission to access the location. We do receive regular updates from the Municipality of North Perth, from the staff there, from the OPP, and also from our partner agencies to provide details regarding active or potential encampments. So we could ask that our outreach team attend to connect with the individuals there. I do want to stop just to mention, if there is an immediate safety concern at any point, or you feel your safety is being threatened, we do ask that you contact the OPP. Their numbers are listed in the presentation, either at their 1888 number or through 911 if there's an immediate safety risk. And I also ask that if you are reporting a crime, you do contact the OPP to let them know of that. And that's not just for individuals experiencing homelessness. That is across the spectrum for everyone who is a part of the community. It's a very important facet that everything that you see and that when things are being seen, that you report those to the OPP. When it comes to proactive outreach, this is a large part of the work that we do. So the first thing, outreach staff do complete regular walkabouts. You may see a City of Stratford vehicle in the area, or you may see the outreach team out. They do regular walkabouts of known encampment locations. They try to engage with the individuals who are staying there. The regularity of visits and how often we're up there, it often depends on the individual case plan we have in place, and also the willingness of the individual to engage with us. I do want to just highlight that our programs are voluntary. There is no mandatory part of our programs. We do our best to engage through different ways to try to bring the individual into the services that we offer and try to support them as best we can. So when an individual is unsheltered and we are made aware, we respond within 72 hours. We do map the location in sight. We do then try to connect with that individual. When we are connecting, we attempt to make contact with the individual residing there, and we'll vary time of day or week if we're unsuccessful in the first time that we make contact. Our focus is to provide a compassionate and caring response when we do meet with those individuals. We want to start with making sure basic needs are met, that the individual is connected to our local by name list, and then review eligibility for applicable services. And then we do look at things like emergency accommodations or financial supports that are available, and then start making referrals to community agencies that can help support these individuals. We try to work collaboratively with our community partners and with the individuals themselves, using what is called a housing first approach. And the housing first approach is very simple. It's exactly as it sounds. The first step is to house an individual and then begin focusing on other short-term plans that we can help support them and provide wraparound supports for them. We do focus on short-term accommodations until permanent housing can be secured. But as mentioned, that those accommodations are in Stratford. Sometimes individuals aren't as willing to access them. They may not feel comfortable accessing them and they do not want to leave their community. We continue to try to address that in North Perth. The biggest thing that we try to do in our outreach is protect and promote the well-being and safety of both those unsheltered as well as members of the public. So if we see obvious safety concerns in the encampment, we will work with the individuals staying there to try to address them, and then complete regular meetings and follow up with them after the fact to ensure that those items are being addressed. A further part is that we do conduct those regular check-ins on an ongoing basis. So when it comes to encampments themselves, we have a few different things we do which focus on the cleaning, the maintenance, and support. Again, it is a voluntary program and we cannot impose any restrictions related to cleanliness, but we do our best to work with the individuals staying there to address safety concerns and concerns related to clutter or garbage at the encampment. So when they're completing regular check-ins with these individuals who are unsheltered, they just try to work with them to address basic maintenance and cleanliness of the space. We do provide necessary supplies, and as I said, we make referrals to individuals to ensure that they can maintain their encampment in a safe and suitable manner. And once an encampment is no longer active, we know there can be concerns around the items and the materials that are left behind. Inactive encampments in many communities can be unsafe due to what is left behind, whether that's garbage, as mentioned, or other items that could be left there. So when an encampment is identified as inactive, and we know the individual secured alternate accommodations, we'll work with that individual to try to have them remove all of their belongings and the garbage that's there. If they're unable to remove them all or there's things that are left behind, we will contact the applicable department of the municipality, request the encampment be cleaned up with an appropriate time frame, and we'll work with them to ensure that senior leadership is first off aware of what's happening and that when the encampment cleanup is requested, it's completed within a timely manner. I do want to say, obviously, weather and different factors, the location of the encampment can play a part in that. And the methods of cleanup used will always ensure the health and safety of all the staff involved. The last part that I'll touch on today is just homelessness prevention. As I mentioned, it's one of the most important things that we do, which is just making sure that individuals do not ever enter our homelessness system and that they stay housed with the appropriate supports to keep them housed. So there's some of the programs that we offer are financial assistance to stay in their home, but could be help with arrears, short-term housing allowances. We have financial assistance to help individuals obtain a home, so last month's rent, assistance with moving costs, furniture costs. There's case management support available for individuals who may be facing eviction. There's referrals, as I mentioned, to our community partners in mental health and addictions fields. And there's also referrals to community partners for things with support such as cleaning, hoarding, or housekeeping issues that may be causing issues with their housing stability. So it's a very quick overview. There are lots of details included in the presentation. I did just want to touch on the importance of the work that's being done and the collaboration that's being done. I want to thank municipality, the OPP for their constant commitment to collaboration with us, for keeping us informed of the experiences of individuals in our community, and for the work that we all continue to do, support individuals to find housing and maintain housing so that their experience of homelessness is as brief as possible. So thank you very much for having us tonight. If you do have any questions, we're happy to take them now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Burgess, and to the rest of the team that's visiting with us in this call, this meeting. We appreciate your attendance tonight. Councillors, questions or comments from you at this point with regards to things that the delegation might be able to answer? Councillor Andreessen first.
Hi, thank you through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Just welcome to our City of Stratford Social Services Department. Welcome. Thank you for the presentation. My question is just about more in statistics. Is North Perth, I guess, having more homelessness than other communities of our size? And the second question I have along with that is, in your first slide, you said that it can, it seems to be rising. But are we seeing any difference in the work that we're doing? Are we seeing an impact? If you could share answers on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, through your worship. Alex, can you speak to maybe the enumeration and what we are seeing, and the fact it is going provincially, the numbers?
Of course. So thank you for the question, through your worship. It's hard to say for comparable communities to look at what the size and kind of what the scope is for numbers of homelessness. We're still working on trying to nail down a better way. Due to the transient nature of a lot of individuals experiencing homelessness, that number can change honestly on a daily basis. Sometimes that can change on a weekly basis. I would say we're quite comparable to communities of our size when we look at, and this would have to be looking at across Perth County with our most recent enumeration numbers. Ourselves in Huron County as counties came in very similar with our numbers through our enumeration. So our enumeration, we had 118 surveys completed. And with those, we don't have a specific location attached to them. Our local by name list at this point in time has grown a bit. We are up to about 169 individuals experiencing homelessness across all of Perth County. So it's a difficult metric to track just for North Perth alone, but I would say for the county itself, we definitely are very comparable to other communities our size. As for the work being done, for most months we do see move-ins that are occurring. There are very few times that we don't see. We average about 7 move-ins per month. So it really just kind of varies on the individuals, our inflow, we call it. So people who are either returning from inactive, who are being evicted and coming into our homelessness system of care. It really varies, but we are definitely seeing a reduction. Unfortunately, the pandemic and some other factors, including housing costs, have driven those numbers up significantly in the last year. But we are seeing, 7, 10, we have had months of 15 to 17 move-ins in a month where we are seeing very positive traction, but it just varies so much month to month. And with the eviction moratorium that was lifted after last year, we have seen kind of that unpredictability of what's happening. So we are definitely doing great work, and the whole system is doing great work to get more individuals housed, but there's definitely more that we can do, and we keep striving to do to try to get people housed as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from council wishing to ask a question or offer comment? I do have sort of a question. I think it's sort of a question, and I'd like to ask. I certainly have taken note as mayor that there's an increased visible presence of homelessness, especially rough homelessness in our community. And certainly at times it has proven to be challenging to maintain a position that's both compassionate and fair to everybody. When I say that, I guess what I'm kind of saying is that there are times when we see encampments that are untidy and that reflect poorly on the community aesthetic, and sometimes reflect poorly on hygiene. These are cases that you know about and you've acknowledged in your comments this evening, Mr. Burgess. But we find that there's a tension because of that. Certainly there are local individuals who call and report, and and send emails to myself and other members of council asking why we are tolerant of that and why aren't we enforcing property standards bylaws and so forth. And so there's this sort of tension between those who are rough homeless and who need supports and members of the community who are concerned as well about a range of matters which are both hygienic and safety oriented and so forth. So I'm wondering if you have some suggestions for us as a council about how we can be wise in establishing an approach that strikes that balance, that finds a good, wise place between those who are concerned that we're not being vigilant in our duties to enforce and to clean up such a mess in some cases, and those who absolutely desire us to be compassionate and otherwise. So, any comments on this?
Thank you, Your Worship.
I think you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you to the worship. I will start and I will pass it off to Alex. One of the challenges we have, again, is this is a voluntary program. So whether they're actively engaging with outreach or not. So that's one of the key issues. If they're actively engaging with the outreach system, our outreach workers, then we do case planning as to what that looks like. And so the goal ideally is that they are not living rough for very long. I would say if we are aware of them, we are actively pursuing to rehouse them immediately. So that's one of the key things that we are looking at. And Alex, do you want to expand on that a little?
Yeah, of course. Through your worship, I think it's a tough balance to strike. I think there needs to be a focus on ensuring that there's humanity in a compassionate response that's provided. But at the same time, there still needs to be some standards and some safety measures that are put in place. I don't think it's a bad thing to look at ensuring that there's some basic levels of safety that you want to see at the encampments. I know our outreach staff will have those conversations on a regular basis to discuss what they see when they're out there, have conversations about how they can make the space safer, knowing that these are in public spaces. I think you have to strike a balance. That's a very difficult one to strike, to ensure that there's still a compassionate response, but you're looking after the safety of the individuals. But I don't think it's a bad approach to take to say, these are some basic expectations. If that involves bylaw, going out and having that conversation, attending with our outreach team to say, these are the standards, the basic standards we're asking you to meet. I don't think that's a bad approach to take, because it does show that there's, as much as there's a compassionate response saying, this is what we want to see, and try to get you housed as quickly as possible, which is always our goal. You also want to say, this is also some basic expectations we want to see regarding cleanliness around the site for both their safety as well as the safety of the individuals who might be attending there, or if there's an emergency and someone has to come out to attend there. We want to make sure that there is a safe space around and that there's not dangerous items that are left around. So I think finding a balance is very difficult. We'd be happy to kind of support you further to try to find a way to make that really work. I would say that's something communities across the province are currently struggling with. It's not a very easy fix to say, these are our basic approach, or we want to take a sweeping approach. I would say on a case-by-case basis. But I think there is an importance to ensuring there's safety and cleanliness in the site. Our staff will try that and have those conversations, but it's not something we can, as Kim said, it's voluntary. So we can't always have success in that avenue, but there is definitely an importance to ensuring there's both safety of the space as well as a compassionate response for the individuals. I don't think they're opposite of one another. I think they can go hand in hand in supporting individuals sleeping rough.
Thanks, Alex. That's certainly been my instinct too. I just was curious about your comments on this while we're on that topic. So thank you for that. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, thank you very much, team from Stratford Social Services and Housing. We appreciate your attending this evening meeting, and we're glad to have that update on behalf of your work in our community. We express our great appreciation and urge you to carry on. Thanks. Okay, so Council, next up we have another delegation. This one is from the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, which is sharing information about the Perth County Joint Accessibility Plan. The filing of a plan on behalf of each municipality annually is a statutory matter. Tonight we get to see what is in the current plan and reflect on performance in 2021. With us are County Clerk Tyler Sager and County Deputy Clerk Sean McCoy. Mr. Sager, I'll let you call the shots here and get things rolling, and you can call in Sean as you need.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and through you to Council. I'm actually going to hand the floor over to Sean relatively quickly here. He has provided a presentation and a bit of a slideshow, so I'll hand it over to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler, and Mayor Kaysenberg, through you to Council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present on the report tonight. I do have a brief slide deck, if I may share it here. Can everybody see that okay? So the slide deck is basically just going to cover a high-level overview of the Joint Accessibility Plan update for the year 2021, as well as provide a general accessibility services activity update for what we have planned for the coming year. Following that, Tyler Sager, the County Manager of Legislative Services and Clerk, and myself will be available for any questions you may have. And just before I jump into the presentation, I want to take the opportunity to thank North Perth staff for their efforts in supporting this update. These updates are a collaboration between 5 different municipalities. And while the county is responsible for compiling the information and packaging it into the report, there wouldn't be much of a report without the information collected and supplied by our colleagues in North Perth and the other lower tiers. So we just want to take a moment to say how grateful we are for their partnership on this report. So the Legislative Service Division at the county has the role of providing accessibility support services to the county in the 4 lower tiers. And this includes supporting and developing policies and procedures, helping to ensure our services and facilities are accessible, supporting AODA compliance and training, acting as a resource to help address concerns, and providing support to the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, or the JAAC. So one of our annual tasks is compiling the update for the Joint Accessibility Plan, and the current plan is in effect for 2018 to 2022. So the plan essentially formalizes Perth County Municipality's commitment to ensuring accessibility by removing barriers and meeting our obligations under the AODA. So this is to ensure the plan's effectiveness by, to ensure the plan's effectiveness by considering lived experience. It was developed in consultation with persons with disabilities and the JAAC. And the report before council today is essentially just an update of activities that have taken place in the last year, documenting our commitment to our municipal obligations in regards to accessibility. So the details of the 2021's accessibility related activities are all included in the report and are categorized by each of the integrated accessibility standards as per the regulation under the AODA. All of the compliance deadlines stated in the regulation have passed. So our accomplishments listed for the county and the lower tier municipalities are by and large just reflective of maintaining the good work we've all already done and building on. So county accomplishments for 2021 are detailed in the update report, but one highlight from last year that I wanted to point out today was providing a number of training webinars in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Society and accessibility consultant Julie Sawchuk. And this was made possible by a grant that we received through the New Horizons Fund. So in terms of goals for this year, the county has accessibility figuring into a number of major projects. Of note, the county is currently preparing for the installation of an elevator in the courthouse. which is the first for that building, and renovations to 5 Huron Street, which is the building where Service Ontario currently resides. And these renovations are to create new administrative space for county staff. And since 2022 will be the last year for the current joint accessibility plan, another major accessibility initiative will be coordinating the development of a new multi-year accessibility plan in collaboration with North Perth and the other lower tiers. As per the information supplied from North Perth staff and staff from the 3 other lower tier municipalities, accomplishments and goals had a number of common themes across the county. There was a lot of focusing on training, some aspect of improving some infrastructure or facilities, and establishing more online services or adding accessible documents and content to the municipal websites. And as you can see here, I've just highlighted a few accomplishments from North Perth that illustrate these themes, including mental health first aid, training for child care workers, enhancements to accessible technology in the reception area, and installation of accessible crosswalks on Wallace Street. And so these themes continue for 2022 with work on Wallace Street North Crosswalk review, ongoing mental health first aid and Lonely No More training, and continuing to work with taxi operators to ensure accessible taxis in North Perth. And as stated before, there are several other initiatives planned for 2022 as detailed in the report. We also want to take the opportunity to highlight some of our accessibility services activities planned for this year. In the 4th quarter of 2020, we implemented quarterly training sessions, and these are supplemental to the mandatory training required under the AODA, and they focus on different aspects of the accessibility standards. And we've received a lot of positive feedback from attendees for these sessions, and we'll be continuing this program for 2022. We will continue to support JAAC initiatives, which will include the installation of an accessible bench at the walking trail located at the Stratford Archives. And as always, we will continue to support the JAAC to facilitate site plan reviews and provide clerking services for their meetings. And of course, we always look forward to working with county and lower tier staff on an ad hoc basis as an information resource on accessibility matters whenever needed. So just before I wrap up, I wanted to provide a note that a final version of what's provided in the agenda today is a draft version, and a final version will be created after the report has gone around to all the lower tiers and the county, and this will be circulated once any feedback has been received. And so that concludes the presentation here today. The report is before you, but Tyler and I are happy to receive any questions you may have. And also, if anyone thinks of anything later, please feel free to reach out. Our contact information is here. It's all included in your agenda package. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you, Mr. Coy. Mr. Sager, did you have any final comments you wanted to make before we ask council to questions?
Thanks, Mayor Kiesenberg. So through you, just one final little thing just to add to Sean's presentation is that final version will be put onto our accessible website, and we update that regularly with information as well.
Thank you very much, both Mr. McCoy and Mr. Sager. Questions from council, comments from council at this point? We're not seeing any. Gentlemen, I think that means you get off nice and easy tonight, which is always a pleasure, I'm sure. But thank you very much for your dedication. I have the opportunity, council, to serve as the county council representative on the JAAC, and it is a pleasure to serve, and they're very highly organized and very effective in bringing forward opportunities to speak and address accessibility in our communities. And so their work is of great dedication, and you can see, in fact, the love that they convey in their work on these files for us. So again, gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your work and for the good report.
Thank you very much.
All right, Council, we have a resolution to help them along with their cause here. It reads as follows: that the North Perth Council received the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021 report, and that North Perth Council approves the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021, and that staff be directed to post the Joint Accessibility Plan Annual Status Update 2021 on the North Perth website. Councillor Duncan, can I call on you to serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Callum, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any indication of that, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, have a good evening.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Right, next up, that brings us to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. Tonight we have no report from the CAO's department, but I can assure you there has been a flurry of activity in that business group over the last 2 weeks since we've last met. Next up then is item 5.2, reports from the clerk's department. For item 5.2.1, council is asked to receive a report on an application for consent to sever surplus farm residents related to lands in the Wallace Ward as brought forward by Lavalette Holdings. Council is further asked to make a recommendation to approve this application to the Council of the County of Perth. And I believe I'm calling on County of Perth Senior Planner Adam Kozlowski to explain this one. Mr. Kozlowski, have I got that right, or is Mr. Yilmaz with us?
No, Your Worship. I'm pinch hitting for Sean on a couple of files just to help out with the workload.
Wonderful. Well, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay. Am I clear to go?
You are. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to share screen and walk council through this application. I trust council can see, it should be the report that's in front of you, the title block.
We can, thank you.
Okay. Your Worship, members of council, good evening, thank you. And I'm going to walk council through this application. It is application B4921, and this is for a surplus farm severance at 6566 Perth Line 88. And I will walk down to some maps and sketches. So first up is an air photo of the subject lands. It's a large agricultural parcel. It's approximately 200 acres. And 164 acres with 3,000 feet of frontage on Perth Line 88 and 1,300 feet of frontage on Road 171. The subject property contains, we'll call it the home farm house over here with a livestock facility. And the owners also own a large parcel over here, which is just outside of Kurtzville. And the surplus farm severance in front of council today is to sever off what was circulated in yellow here. And I just want to briefly touch on the development on the lot area. So through discussion with the applicant, they had originally proposed a 100-foot rear yard, and I'll go to the severance sketch that was originally submitted. I'm just trying to find the zoom tool here. So the applicants had originally requested, it's a 36-meter setback to the rear wall of the home. So that's a little bit over 100 feet, about 120 feet. And they were asking for 200 feet of frontage on line 88. And through conversation, I suggested that the lot be reduced in size to cut the backyard approximately in half. And that sketch is shown here. Hopefully everybody can see that. So the revised lot area is going from 0.94 acres, so just under 1 acre, down to 0.75 acres, or 3/4 of an acre. And the reason for the reduced rear yard is to meet the 18-meter rear yard setback to the house. And then this grassed area plus the solar panels would be retained with the farmland. So the owners, they concur with the reduced lot size. They have no objection. So hopefully we can get this one through as an undisputed consent if North Perth Council concurs this evening. And just a few site photos. So the property was posted in accordance with the Planning Act. And this is the property driveway in with the house. And then there's some solar panels which would be kept on the retained farm lot. So staff have reviewed this application in accordance with the policies of the official plan. We have no objection and recommend North Perth Council endorse the application. And I would be happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlowski. At this time, council, any questions or first comments? Okay, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Adam, for your report. Welcome to North Perth. Adam, I'm wondering if you could go back to some specific details on the other farm property which Laval owns. My reading of the report is that there is no dwelling on that farm to the west. So I'd like you to explain how, in fact, we have a farm consolidation where we've got a farm dwelling on 2 or more farms, and how this application conforms to that policy. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Rothwell, the subject lands has 2 homes on it right now, so they do own 2 farms in Perth County. This secondary dwelling, we'll call it, that's the subject of the application tonight, is the dwelling that's been deemed surplus.
Mayor Todd, just further, I certainly understand, Adam, there's 2 dwellings on this 164 acres. They've been that way for quite some time. I just don't understand how the other farm to the west, which is owned by Lavalette, has no dwelling on that, and how, in fact, we have a consolidated farm operation. Normally, my understanding is our applications where we have 2 or more farms, each of which have a dwelling, and as a result of farm consolidation, one of those dwellings on one of those 2 farms is considered to be surplus to their needs, as opposed to this situation where we have 2 farms, one which has no dwellings, one which has 2. Perhaps you could enlighten me. Thank you.
Through you, your worship, again, when we reviewed the policies on this one, they meet the criteria for having the 2 farms, and this farm has 2 dwellings, and this is the surplus dwelling that's council's considering tonight. That's our read of the policies.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone further? Questions or first comments? Okay, let's consider the resolution here. I've gotten wise in my 4th year. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you, Council, unless you insist. Councillor Johnston, be careful what you ask for. What I have is a resolution which is in the agenda package, and I will read the preface essentially to this, noting that there are a number of conditions. So, the resolution reads as follows: the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received a report entitled Consent to Sever Surplus Farm Residence number B49/21, dated February 28th, 2022, affecting the lands described as lots 43 to 45, in Section 5, Wallace Ward, 6566, Perth Line 88, for information. and that council recommends that the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate approve the application for consent to sever surplus farm residence number B49/21, subject to the following conditions. There are 6 from the County of Perth that are listed, and there are 4 from North Perth that are listed. Councillor Richardson, can I call on you to serve as our mover for this one?
I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rothwell, will you be our seconder?
I prefer not. Thank you.
Sure. Let's go to Councillor Andreessen. Will you be our second?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, discussion or debate. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Not to go on too much further about it, but on the through you to Adam Kozlowski, the question I have is, when I look at the conditions, is there any, and I don't see it here, perhaps I've lost it, but in the second of the farms, the one immediately to the west owned by Leva, which has no farm dwelling on it currently, are there any provisions that prohibit the construction of a new farm dwelling on that parcel?
Sorry, through you, Your Worship, the property next door does not have any provisions. The provisions would only apply to the land in front of council this evening. And I'm just while we're speaking, I was just looking at the surplus farm policies again, and yeah, there is a criteria there. So perhaps council wishes to recommend deferral of this evening, so we can sort out the policy issue on this.
Okay, so we've just received some expert advice that perhaps a little bit more staff time needs to be spent on this one, looking at policy. That reflects the opportunity for us to consider this motion. We could defeat this outright and bring another resolution for the purposes of deferral, or we could withdraw this. The clerk is giving me advice here. We could withdraw this motion, should we so need to do. And I believe the process for that would be consent from the mover and the seconder. Does that sound right to you, Clerk Klein? Okay, so let me just sort of test the will of council here. With regards to withdrawal, that might be the appropriate and best path at this point. Would the mover, who is Councillor Richardson, consent to withdrawal of this motion? Should be the wish of the rest of council.
I consent to withdraw that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Councillor Andreessen has sent me a text note indicating that she agrees to withdraw. Councillors, just to make sure that we're not doing anything amiss here, are any of you opposed to withdrawing this motion at this point in time? We're not seeing any indication of that. Do we need a vote on this, Clerk Klein, do you think? Or to withdraw the original motion? Okay, so we don't believe we need a motion to be considered on the floor for withdrawal. We think we've got the consent of all councillors, including the mover and seconder. So this motion has been withdrawn. Now let's turn to an alternate motion then, which is that, I'll do my best to wordsmithing here right away. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report entitled Consent to Sever Surplus Farm Residence number B49/21, dated February 28th, 2022, affecting the lands described as lots 43 to 45, Session 5, Wallace Ward, 6566, line 88, for information, and that council defers a decision for recommending or for providing a recommendation to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate regarding the application for consent to sever surplus farm residence number B49/21 until additional information is provided by county staff. That sounds pretty good. All right, why don't we turn to, let's see here. why don't we, maybe we can use the same mover and seconder. Councillor Rothwell, will you consent to move that one?
I'm willing to do that. However, I think Councillor Richardson moved that previous.
Oh, okay, so sorry, maybe I'm losing track of my people here. That's unfortunate. Councillor
That
Richardson.
motion. I will make that motion.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Rothwell, will you be our seconder for this one?
I will second this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we seem to be roughly back on track. Okay, any discussion or debate on this? Yes, Councillor Barons.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. And I do agree with the deferral simply because this is not really the policy that covers surplus farmhouse severance. It could possibly come under another policy. My only concern is, and I know this is unusual because it's regarding the size of this possible severance. And if you have to go and replace a septic or a well, 0.75 acres is not a lot of area to do it. And I would hate for something to happen. So I was just wondering if, since we're deferring it anyway, to ensure it follows a correct policy, it's not the surplus farmhouse policy, maybe we could reconsider the size of the lot for future septic or well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's good advice, Mr. Kozlowski. I trust you've heard that. Next up is Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I just want to make sure that this will be delayed at land division then as well. If we are to defer it tonight, that it will automatically delay it at land division until we make a decision.
Mr. Kozlowski, I assume that's the general policy that their land division awaits a recommendation from this council and then would consider it on its agenda?
Yes, Your Worship. It would have to get, we would have to get everything squared away for endorsement from the local council before it goes to land division.
Thank you. I think that confirms the date. Okay, anyone else with the question or comment? Okay, so we have a resolution on the floor modified from what is in the agenda package that effects a deferral of taking the action that originally was requested or suggested in this report, and that staff will bring forward further information. Everyone understands what we're voting on, right? Okay, I'm not seeing any further, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up then, for item 5.2.2, Council is asked to receive a report on an application for consent to sever surplus farm residents related to lands in the Wallace Ward as brought forward by Scotland Holdings. Council is further asked to make a recommendation to approve this application to the Council of the County of Perth or its designate. Again, Mr. Kozlowski is with us this week. I'll call on him to take the floor and explain this one to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council, I'll share screen and walk through this application. Okay, so application B5221 is for Scotland Holdings, and this property is at 5185 line 89. And I will walk Council through this application. For this applicant, just to reiterate, they do have, they operate from 3 farm properties in the county, and the home farm's at 9032 Road 152. So the air photo, the subject land is a large agricultural parcel, and the proposed severed lot is here in yellow. So the severed lot would basically form along the west tree line. And this is skewed a little bit. So we would look at the west tree line here and then the south tree line. And then the line would shoot down the east side of the driveway, taking in the house and the storage garage. And here's the sketch submitted with the application, just showing the lot area. So they're proposing a severed lot of 1.87 acres with 200 feet of frontage on 89. And the retained farm lot would be just under 100 acres. And just some site photos. So the property was posted in accordance with the Planning Act. This photo is looking south towards the house and the shop. The tree line at the back would form the south lot line. And this is just looking west towards the tree line that would form the west lot line. And this is just looking from the road and at the dwelling. Staff have reviewed this application in accordance with the official plan, and we have no objection, recommending approval, subject to the conditions in the report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kozlowski. Questions or first comments from council? Okay, we're not seeing any at this point in time, so let's have a look at the resolution. Once again, Wiser Todd will not read all 9 conditions, but he will identify that there are some. So, resolution reads as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report entitled Consent to Sever Surplus Farm Residence Number B52-21, dated February 28, 2022, affecting the lands described as Lot 6, Concession 6, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, 5185, line 89, for information, and that Council recommends that the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate approve the application for consent to sever surplus farm residence number B52-21, subject to the following conditions. There are 4 of them from the county. There are 5 of them from North Perth. They are all in the agenda package. And I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one.
Yes, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstedt, will you serve as our seconder for this one?
Yes, I would second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Okay, we're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kozlowski, for pinch hitting for Mr. Yilmaz. We appreciate your time tonight.
And thank you, Your Worship, members of council, and have a good evening.
All right, that allows us to turn to item 5.3, reports from the Programs Department. As item 5.3.1, the Programs Department, as an interested party, brings forward an update on the activities ongoing towards the Community Safety and Well-Being Plan, particularly the work of the CSWB Partnership Council in Perth County. Lots of acronyms here. I will call on Amy Gangle, our Manager of Programs, for comments and to answer questions. Welcome, Ms. Gangle. Is Willow with you tonight or no?
She is, but she's sleeping beside me, so you may
Very
not
good.
see her on the screen.
Very good.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It has been truly my pleasure to attend the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council meetings on behalf of the Municipality of North Perth. We felt it a good time for us to provide an update for all council members. So this is our update for you. As you'll note, I've got it as update 1, just so that everybody's aware that we will be providing ongoing updates as we have them to be able to keep everyone informed of what we're up to. So just as a reminder, our Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan provides a roadmap for inclusion, connected and coordinated safety wellbeing planning. It ensures a proactive and integrated approach to addressing local crime and complex social issues on a sustainable basis, identifies key priorities for safety and well-being planned locally, supports and strengthens existing initiatives related to community safety and well-being, and addresses local service and system gaps. Since we've started meeting in June, we've had several meetings, and we just as close as even last week. And so just providing some things. So we actually developed our terms of reference, and we composed the members of the executive leadership team. We established a logo for this program. We've also designed a website and created an online newsletter, social platforms, ways for us to be able to share and inform information for the public. And that's something that we really find is a very important thing to do. So we do ask all of our council members and public members to check out the website. If interested, sign up for the online newsletter to stay up to date with information and engage with us to ask those questions for us to be able to make sure that the information we have on those platforms is helping to keep you updated. We are drafting a list of members for the key stakeholders meeting, understanding it is a committee that, depending on what our topics are, what our subjects are, we may draw some individuals in more focused, depending on those topics, and then others may just be a little bit more advisory, depending on where we are at with our certain projects. We also feel the importance of communicating with our Huron County members. So the both chairs of both the Huron and Perth County Community Safety Wellbeing Partnership Councils, they convene on a quarterly basis to discuss the projects and see if there's any opportunities for us to collaborate as they occur. We've also created a communication strategy, and this includes the engagement of each of the municipalities, marketing and communications personnel, so that they are getting the feel for each of our own municipalities, making sure that our messages are consistent and meeting the same messages across the whole county. We've developed a 2022 budget, and the attachment we have in this package provides that breakdown for us. And we're having initial discussions about the performance indicators. So for us to be able to measure our 5 key outcomes that were identified in our implementation plan. The overarching key outcomes are increased coordinated and collaboration between services, improved access to services, greater alignment on key safety and well-being issues, reduced demand on emergency and crisis services, and enhanced systems plannings. We're currently conducting an inventory of existing collaborative committees. We felt it's very important for us to understand what work is already happening that is in relation to those priorities. The information from this will help us determine what roles groups can play in implementing our plan and if any new action groups need to be formed. And just as additional note, the implementation plan, the terms of reference, and our meeting minutes are all available on the website for anybody to check. So we've identified in my report just the financial implications. This was identified in our 2022 budget, and just highlighting that this is coming from our reserves through our Ontario Cannabis Legalization Fund. Available for any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Gangle. Comments or questions at this point before we consider a resolution? I do have a question, Amy, actually. As you know, over the course of many encounters that I've had as mayor, I have noted that there's some confusion at times about where to go when people are in crisis and having troubles. And perhaps the most salient report of that came from the Mayor's Task Force on Mental Health platform, which identified that there is a little bit of confusion with regards to how people might get help in North Perth. And I guess one of the things that has intrigued me all along and that I'm not sure I fully understand, so I'm hoping you might help me with this, is how this plan and these stakeholders are differentiated from the Ontario Health Team. And that initiative, which I admit certainly is health oriented, but that seems to have similar goals and aspirations, and it sure seems like you know, the two arms essentially would embrace each other. Maybe I'm not thinking about this straight, but I'm hoping you might offer some comment. And I know, Councillor Behrens, you had some involvement in this field as well, so maybe you have some insight into this as well. Amy, let's go to you first.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, with regards to the confusion of where people to go in crisis, last week's conversation actually led us to that. We had really in-depth conversations about that. And I think that was information that we even ourselves found as we're collecting this information and relating it to our priority areas. So we actually have this as a highlighted area for us to really delve into that. How is best to be able to share that information, what we can do. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be able to help assist with providing clarity, whether that is us sharing additional platform that has all that information in there or whether we are that conduit, that's yet to be determined. And we are in the works of having those conversations with all of the partners. There is a lot of different arms out there of we're doing surveys to find out how in-depth individuals are involved. Are they more resourceful? Are they action groups? So that we can really get an indication of what priority areas are really already being well taken care of, that we can maybe just share that information to support, or areas that maybe need a little bit more action. So we're still in that works. Hopefully next update report I can provide a bit more details with that.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Behrens, I don't know if you had anything you want to add based on your experience with the organizing of this?
Just that was part of some of the dilemma that we dealt with originally on the steering committee. And to me, and Amy can correct me if I'm wrong here, but my impression was that we were trying to align all the services and the agencies and know who's doing what, when, who they're doing it for, that type of thing. And once we get a really good grasp on what's all taking place, I mean, part of it too is developing, we already know there's some gaps, and I'm going to use the lonely no more. Like, we know that there's, you know, a lot of people aren't dealing with the mental health issues and those types of things. And so that is a program that kind of fills in a bit of a gap between the agencies. So I think what you'll see is the community safety and well-being plan develop into better coordination, better collaboration, but also some of those stopgap measures that are going to enhance our communities and try to really get the services to the people and the people to the services. I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, and very promising. I think all of us aspire to see real sort of coherent and integrated kind of face around the services available across a range of health and safety compromises. And so it's been one of those head scratchers for me, is how do we get there? And it sure sounds like this is part of getting there. So appreciate both of your contributions to help me clear up a little bit in my head what's going on. All right, Council, any other questions or comments? I have a resolution for our consideration then, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the Community Safety and Wellbeing Update Report for information. Councillor Johnston, can I call on you to be our mover for this?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would be happy to. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gangle. Now let's move on to item 5.4 on our agenda, reports from Facilities Department. For item 5.4.1, Council is provided with a report following up on a request from the Municipality of North Huron for financial support towards their recreational operating costs. This request came in a letter from North Huron that explained that a proportion of users of their recreational amenities and services are domiciled in North Perth. I'm going to invite North Perth Manager of Facilities Jeff Newell to comment on the report and its recommendation. Welcome, Mr. Newell.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. Yes, the report comes in response to correspondence that was listed in the consent agenda of January 24th and was pulled for discussion. With regards to the operation of recreation facilities and the cost of them, most or typically municipal recreation facilities and programs do operate in an annual deficit position and are funded by both user fees as well as a tax base. In some situations, there is an opportunity from a programming standpoint to charge a non-resident fee, which would be higher than that of a typical resident for use of the facilities. That is something that North Huron was doing in the past, but has recently stopped that practice. The other point that I'd like to make is that many of the rec and parks amenities and facility amenities are not revenue generating, so they wouldn't have a program associated with that. And that would be something like your parks or your trail system, which have very high operating costs in order to maintain, but they do not generate any revenue. Most municipalities have economic development people that are tasked with bringing people to the community. So it should be expected that there would be non-resident users of the recreation facilities. Similar to North Huron, we would at North Perth, we would also be hosting residents from their community in our recreation facilities as well. So I think it's important to understand that the council take a look at the request for $53,599.11 would be the request for this current fiscal year. And it would be anticipated that a request similar to that would be made in future years. If council declines the request, there would certainly be no financial implications in this scenario. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or take comments from members of council.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Council, opportunity for questions or first comments. Councillor Anstett.
Thanks, Mayor Kaysenberg. Through you. Thanks for the report, Jeff. Just wondering, I didn't see it in there. I'm just wondering if you have any insight as to how many other municipalities this request was made to. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have the actual number, Councillor Anstett. It was all of the neighboring municipalities to North Huron. So I would think it would be all of those that are adjacent to it. So probably in the neighborhood of five municipalities. At the time of writing this report, and since then, I've heard of no other council that's supported the request.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Jeff, for the report. This certainly added the details that I think the rest of the council was looking for with respect to the background for the request, and I agree with your recommendation, and will encourage council not to support the funding the request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone further? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration then. Per the report, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth decline the request from the Township of North Huron for financial support to cover recreation operating costs. Councillor Duncan, would you like to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll definitely make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
And yes, I will second that motion for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you on that one. Let's move on to item 5.4.2. Council is invited to consider a reduction in the charges associated with advertising in various recreational facilities that the corporation owns to cover for facility closure that is the result of government instructions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll call on Mr. Newell again to speak to the report and its recommendation. Mr. Newell, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Back in 2021, which doesn't seem that long ago unless you're counting COVID months, but the COVID pandemic caused our recreation facilities to be closed down for a number of months, and council had directed staff at that time to offer a 50% discount to those advertisers that had purchased spots in our community centers for advertising. This current year, our plan was to be open as things were looking good when we were coming into our budget preparation time, that we would be open. However, COVID did cause us to have closures of our facilities again for the month of January. Staff are recommending a discount of 10% to our advertisers. And the reason for that is we feel that a number of businesses, obviously, that are supportive of our initiatives have been hit as well by COVID. We want to maintain a positive relationship with those people to encourage them to continue to support us moving forward. And we feel that it is an exercise in good faith to recommend a 10% decrease in advertising revenue or fees. The loss of revenue by doing a 10% reduction would be approximately $4,670, and feel that that is a discount that is well spent in order to maintain positive relationships.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Any questions or first comments on this matter? Okay, we're not seeing any. So I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth direct staff to offer a 10% discount to current advertisers in our recreational facilities, I believe is what it should say, for the 2022 fiscal year. I'm adding a couple words in here just so that we make sure we have some boundaries. Okay. Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our mover for this one?
I would definitely move that. I'm fully in favor of it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richardson, will you serve as a seconder?
I'll gladly second that. I'm in favor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any, so let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Newell, thank you, and to your team, our continuing best wishes. Appreciate all of your work.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Let's move now to reports from our finance department as item 5.5. As item 5.5.1, finance staff has brought forward for council review the accounts as of today, February 28th, 2022. This account listing represents expenditures for all municipal services, including Perth Meadows operations. It does not include the incoming revenues that offset these expenses. I'll note that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions about this report for our staff? We're not seeing any at this point, so I have a resolution, council, for our consideration that the following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total is $1,821,275.83. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for this one?
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. That is carried, noting the abstentions. All right, let's move forward. Item 5.5.2, Council is provided with an update on the Development Charges Reserve Fund and asked to authorize deployment of some of the fund to purposes established by budget. I'm going to ask, I believe, Ms. Hale, our Treasurer and Director of Finance, for a review of this matter. Ms. Hale, you're with us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasingberg, members of council. This evening, I just am asking council to consider the withdrawal of funds from our Development Charges Reserve Fund. We're asking that $2,100,233.06 be transferred. This year, or in 2021, there was a substantial amount collected in reserve and development charges, totaling $3,230,000. Excuse me, I'm having trouble speaking tonight. $3,223,123.10 from building activity. And this leaves us with a total development charge reserve fund of $6,491,522.87. I've also provided a chart with the report, just identifying where the monies have come in and where they are going out, so that you can see the net total for each of the areas for which we are collecting reserve dollars for, or development dollars for. And if there's any further questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Questions, comments from council at this point? Okay, we're not seeing any. We have two steps to do here. First, a resolution, and then we have a bylaw. Let's take them in order. First, the resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the report, Municipality of North Perth Development Charges Reserve Fund as of December 31st, 2021 for information. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now we have the bylaw that will enable all this, and the covering resolution for the bylaw reads as follows. Bylaw number 32-2022 being a bylaw of the Municipality of North Perth to authorize the withdrawal and transfer of development charges funding to revenue be introduced, read, and passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Okay, let's ask Councillor Duncan, would you be prepared to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. All right, any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is item 5.5.3. The finance team has brought forward a usual bylaw that enables the corporation to borrow money for operating and capital expenditures for 2022. This is a really housekeeping item, as I understand it, that enables, should need occur, for cash flow purposes. I'm just checking in. I think it's again the treasurer who will speak to this, Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Mayor Kasingberg, members of council. Yes, I feel that the mayor has summarized the purpose of this bylaw. To date, we've not had to access temporary borrowing for the municipality. However, it is a tool that we like to have in our tool bag just in case that there is a need that comes and that we are prepared for it. So this evening, I'm asking you to pass the temporary borrowing bylaw for $5 million.
All right. Thank you. Questions or first comments on this matter for council? The clerk and I have had a brief discussion about the wording of this resolution. It's a little different than our usual bylaw enablement resolutions. Ms. Hale, is there an explanation that supports that it says be introduced, read, and passed, as opposed to be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, that kind of stuff? Is that something you can comment on? Did we lose Ms. Hale? Looks like it. Is CEO Snow with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have a thought on this one? Like, is there a reason for a change in this wording?
So there's no requirement under the Act to use the language of first, second, and third reading, and it was something that has been discussed, but maybe not fully across the board yet. So it's certainly at the discretion of council. But first, second, and third reading is not necessarily a requirement in the Municipal Act of a bylaw.
Oh, okay. So we just learned a little something new. Okay, then I have a resolution for our consideration. We'll let it stand the way it's written here. The bylaw number 33-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet 2022 operating expenditures of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that so that we can keep Fran in business.
An important priority. And Councillor Richardson, will you serve as seconder?
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Okay, seeing none, let's have that vote.
Councillor Rothwell.
Councillor Rothwell, what say you? And it looks like we have.
I'm in favor, yes.
Looks like we have everyone accounted for, so that is carried. Thank you. Let's move down to item 5.5.4. Council is presented with work from the Finance Department towards establishing a fundraising and donation policy. And I'm going to assume, and I see her face there, that this is for Becky Belfour, our Deputy Treasurer, for comments. Welcome, Ms. Belfour.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. Yes, before you is the fundraising donation policy for the Municipality of Perth. Note that in the Finance 2022 business plan, it's strategic project 3.2.1. This policy has been in the works for some time now with several drafts of various forms. We could have taken several avenues, but decided to develop a high-level approach. The intent of the policy is to ensure that we follow proper CRA, Canada Revenue Agency protocols, and provide an easy yet clear term for our donors. So there's various streams of for people to make donations within North Perth. So we needed to establish these guidelines, managing and how we would manage the donations and all aspects of the projects and be verified under the CRA criteria. So noting that the first part of the policy, there are various types of donations and just give me a second here, sorry. So there's various policy checklists within Schedule A, B, and C. These are for internal purposes only. These will not be shown to or go out to the public. It will not be posted on our website. It will be for the designated donation policy assistant to review with the department heads to ensure that it covers all of our bases, that we're looking at insurance, or depending on the kind of donation it is, insurance, assets, budgets, long-term costing, those sorts of things. So it's just like a really good overview that we've put in place when we decide on conditional or fundraising donation policies. So the donation policy assistant will be the keeper of all records that pertain to the donations, including the checklists and the various schedules of the project. So Schedule D of the policy is a very high level template that will be followed for every donation fundraising campaign. Later after this report, you'll note that I have used this Schedule D to create a fundraising package so you could see how it will be implemented. And we would use this same template moving forward for every fundraising donation project that is established. These projects will be presented to council for approval and will be reviewed yearly with the donation policy assistant and departmental staff to ensure that they are up to date and no changes are required. This policy will also be used as a legacy donation project that could be established by department heads in the future. So they would then take the fundraising donation Schedule D and follow the template through to come up with that part of the policy or project. Donations provide a positive revenue stream, especially for community projects. So throughout the policy, you'll note there's the definitions, the policy content. So there's unconditional donations, conditional donations, in kind, and community and organization projects for donations. Also talks to the approval authority. So anything over $5,000 would be approved by council. And the issuance of the receipts, sort of the CRA components of how we would work with the donation policy. And then the maintenance of the records and how we have to adhere to Canada Revenue Agency with those, that criteria. And then you go into, like I had indicated before, the donation policy checklist for the various different kinds of donations. And again, it kind of goes the community project checklist. It looks at the assets. It looks at insurance, whether it fits with our strategic plan and our strategic initiatives. And again, asset information. Then there's the conditional cash donation checklist, which is very similar. I just a few, just a little bit more broken down is like, what is it exactly going to be for, and the criteria that is required to approve whether we move forward with that conditional donation. And then Schedule C is actually the fundraising project package. So this would be filled out by the department heads for any fundraising project. And there are the development concepts, so provide a high-level overview of the entire project, the financial implications, so the budget of the project, any terms and conditions. And so we itemized some that we felt there will definitely be more. And that was why it was very difficult to develop this policy, is because there's so many different terms that could happen depending on the project. There could be potentially naming opportunities depending on the project, again, similar to the Steve Kerr Memorial Arena. There were lots of different naming opportunities there. So any supporting documents, so pictures, diagrams of where things would be placed, that kind of thing would also be part of this. And then we included a template for letters that we will provide for every donation going or coming into the municipality moving forward. And as well, a pledge form. So that, in a nutshell, is what I've proposed for our new fundraising donation policy.
Thank you, Ms. Balfour. Lots of work has been done there, obviously. Council, questions or first comments? Okay, we're not seeing any at this point. So I have a resolution for our consideration. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth approved the fundraising donation policy and the attached schedules as part of the policy. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for this one?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, it's my pleasure to second this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Comments? Okay, we're not seeing any. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Ms. Balfour, you're not off the hook yet. Seems you've been pretty busy with policy development lately. And as item 5.5.5, Council is presented with a policy to support commemorative donations. This does seem like a natural consequence. The last item and clarifies our process for interested parties, amongst other things. Ms. Balfour, you're back up. Floor is yours. You're muted, I think.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I do apologize. Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and Council. So as I indicated before, the fundraising donation Schedule C of the package allows for the donation projects. So what we thought we would do for Council tonight is do our first fundraising donation project, which was already put into place by the Parks and Recreation Department staff and Community Development Coordinator through the Commemorative Bench and Tree Program. What we did then is we enhanced this and consolidated it all together in Schedule D of the new template, but we included the Memorial Garden plaque for Moncton Memorial Garden and Robert Mather's Park Memorial Garden, as well as various other items that might be suitable for commemorative donations. And so you can see within the policy, we use the template, and this one was probably one of the smaller projects that we might see, but we use the template, gave the project concept, which was already developed. And so this one was fairly easy. We established the donation terms, which were, you know, the various things within the naming convention for the plaques, and how plaques would be handled in the future, just giving some high level terms for staff to follow. And then we included the fixed cost for donations for the plaques, for the memorial gardens, as well as the trees and the benches, and then the variable costs or variable cost donations. So we included children programs and life jackets, signage, first aid CPR supplies, so other items that people could donate commemoratively. And our plan will be to have a commemorative page on our website for people to see all of the donations that have come in with regard to this. These ones are tough to have a plaque or anything like that. So that again, our supporting documentation, so some pictures talking about the eligible trees that are able to be donated and our memorial garden plaque, so that you could see, they could see the new garden signs that we have, that those plaques can go on. So that was the approach we took. So this is our first fundraising donation package that will be reviewed, or it is for staff to follow and move forward with those donations. Like we have in the past, we just put it on paper as a part of the policy. And we will follow the CIRA criteria within the policy, and our donation policy assistant will track and keep track of everything for this as well.
Thank you, Ms. Belfour. At this time, council, any questions or first comments? That's it into perspective. All right, I have a resolution then for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the North Perth Commemorative Donation Program 1-2022. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Councillor Behrens, will you serve as seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Okay, seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. And I think that concludes our finance department package tonight. Council, I ask your indulgence. Let's take a health recess at this point and return to the table at 9 o'clock. Right, I'd like to invite councillors back to the table. Please let us know that you're with us by turning your camera on. We'll wait another few seconds to make sure we've got attendance and attention. All right, the clerk and I are agreed. We're good to go. So welcome back from recess, council. At this point, we can move along to item 5.6, and we do not have a report from the Environmental Services Department to consider tonight. But we know, as always, they're diligently at work maintaining critical infrastructure and the safety of same. So we are grateful, as always, for their service. Let's turn to item 5.7, reports from our Manager of Operations. Mr. Couch, sorry I made you wait a little bit for a recess there, but nature calls. So for 5.7.1, Manager of Operations has brought forward a report and recommendation relating to a request heard by this council to provide an additional service at a home in construction in a subdivision in our community. And Mr. Couch, our Manager of Operations, is our staff expert on this. So Mr. Couch, welcome. Walk us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. Yes, there was a delegation in January that had asked to construct additional services to a semi-detached dwelling that is proposed on Kiso. Kiso Lane is in a unassumed subdivision that I'll be referring to as Maitland River Estates. These types of requests are not unusual on existing streets and older infrastructure. It's typical for staff, and almost always when they hear these requests, they would approve them in infill lots in older sections of the municipality. Because this is a newly developing subdivision, the actual process is one that needed to be reviewed and has brought about some of these applications in the past that were approved, and has brought about some consequences and some challenges in terms of the actual construction, and then the quality of the work that is done and the possible impacts to the infrastructure, the roadway, when this is done. So just in summary, the diagram I'll turn to is the one with the red dots on it, and it'll just give us a little bit of an understanding about what we're approving here. If you move a little bit further on in the report, you'll see that I had a single dot diagram as well as a double dots. What that shows, actually, yeah, if you just scroll back a page, yeah, the yellow lines there. So the existing building had servicing coming straight out and was approved through a process in the subdivision review program that would see us approving services coming straight out to the road. An application came in for additional units and consequently a change in servicing. But what it creates, and what we found out as we went through this process previously, is the single red dot represents an area where that new service would swing almost touching the adjacent property. It can't be on the adjacent property, but if you look at that, it's going to be probably a half meter from it and approximately 8 feet down or 2 meters down. The double red dots show that the locations of the servicing for the neighboring unit actually are in the front driveway of the neighboring property. So those are the implications of approving these in new subdivisions where additional lots are placed. So if we look at the application again, we're going to see that these things would result in a road cut, in possible settlement in the sidewalk and the curb line and the road over time as well. And as I said, the development process and the subdivision agreement process is one where we approve drawings and services early on in an attempt to make sure that there aren't changes that are made later on. So these applications came in later on, and what we were trying to review, and we actually reviewed it with a number of parties, staff did, was to see if there was a method of avoiding this from happening and still being fair to the applicants as we move through the process. I would also note that this is only happening in this subdivision, so it's unique and it's new here, and we're trying to, come up with a fair answer in terms of the application, but also something that's going to be a guideline for the future in terms of the direction we take if these kinds of applications come forward again. So we talked to the municipal engineer on a few occasions about this, and the municipal engineer who actually helped with our development agreements said that the wording in the process itself specifically deterred this from happening, and the application should not come forward in the past. Although we did accept them, it was not with the recommendation of the municipal engineer, and in fact, we've changed our wording just to strengthen it to make sure that applicants know for the future not to make changes after the main sanitary, storm, and water lines are placed in the subdivision to try and avoid these problems. I've also contacted the solicitor, and the solicitor has specified, and this was new, that in order to move forward with such an application, we really haven't fully assumed the subdivision and aren't fully in control of those sewer pipes at this point, and still find that the developer would be responsible. So a secondary and new agreement, legal agreement, would have to be established where the municipality, the builder, and the developer would have agreement that this is necessary and needed, and then would have to sign off and agree to it. So that would be the other implication of moving forward with this. So we really don't have the authority of doing that, and an agreement, if necessary in a circumstance, could be set up. We also spoke to other developers. We have several subdivisions that are on the go with several different developers. And they specifically were asked about additional servicing and changes late in the process, which we don't see in those subdivisions. And they said specifically that the relationship they have with the builders, and I'll try and quote it, that there would be no changes once trunk sewers and mains were installed, that they would understand upon the sale of the lots that the builders wouldn't be asking for those types of additions because the developer is ultimately responsible, and they understood it that way. So I think this would be something as we move forward that we can recommend, and that would be very acceptable in probably most developments, and hopefully this one as well. So if we review it, there's impacts to the infrastructure. We don't want to cut into brand new infrastructure, cut the main sewers, cut the water lines. We don't want to position them in such a way that they're close to neighboring or in fact under neighboring driveway aprons that are on the municipal road allowance, those types of things. The applicant itself, this application did come forward actually through to county planning. County planning accepted it. The sketch is actually included in this report. It showed single services, and that was what was approved. It went through our building department with the single services and was approved at that point. We actually, as a site plan and development review committee, talked about it on 2 occasions at 2 different meetings, trying to resolve this issue and trying to see where we should go in the future. And the review committee also felt that it was not necessary and it should not be approved. Field staff felt the same way just for the impacts that I talked about on the road and potential servicing in the future. So the recommendation is an attempt to be fair and to be clear as to why it's not a good idea, that it impacts infrastructure, that we don't have authority to do it, and that in the future, if we ever wanted to, we would have to set aside a separate agreement with the 3 parties and establish that at the developer's cost to move forward with this type of a change. So the recommendation in front of you is to deny the request, but hopefully that we could communicate it back to the builder and other builders through this process as to why, and to avoid it in the future, and to explain up front through new wording in the agreements that it isn't necessary, and it in fact isn't expected to be accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Full explanation. All right, council questions, first comments? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of same, so I have a resolution suggested for consideration. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth deny the request for additional services at Lot 38 and 39 Keeso Street in the Maitland River Estates subdivision. Councillor Duncan, will you serve as our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Callum, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Are you seeing anything? Okay, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Great clarity there. Okay, item 5.7.2, on the recommendation of staff and GM Blue Plan Engineering, who are involved in this project, council is invited to award the tender for the reconstruction of the Davidson Street Bridge to McLean Taylor Construction. Mr. Couch, our manager of operations, will address this one as well. On the seat again, Mr. Couch.
Thank you. The Davidson Street Bridge, actually originally called the Brewery Bridge in 1950 when it was first constructed, was scheduled for replacement in 2019 when an inspection was conducted by the consulting engineer saying it was in poor condition. It rated a 44 and it needed full replacement. We went through a funding application that was denied. However, what was a benefit of the process that took over a year was to redesign the bridge to try and change the alignment slightly so it fits the road better for traffic and creates better visibility. Also to allow for pedestrian access on both sides, sidewalks on both sides of the new structure, as well as fully accessible trail connections on both sides of the river. So we're actually, from a bridge perspective, excited about the project. It meets exactly almost to the dollar the estimated budget that came through the capital budget process this year, and the engineer's recommendation is also in front of you for consideration. So the construction company is McLean Taylor. They have a wealth of experience actually with bridge work. We're also looking forward to working with them on the project, and they expect to get started in the June-July window after the in-river season opens up for construction.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Any questions or first comments from council? Okay, we're not seeing any, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the council of the Municipality of North Perth award the tender for the Bridge L2 replacement, Davidson Avenue North, as per the recommendation from GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited to McLean Taylor Construction Limited, in the amount of $2,172,123.93 HST excluded. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, will you do the seconding duties?
I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Deputy Mayor Kella.
Just a question. I can wait till after the vote, Mayor Kaysenberg, if you wish.
If it's pertinent to this, then let's have it.
Okay, just a question. So I see the time frame is what you just explained there. So is that bridge closed for that set of time, or is it a half and half?
It'll be fully closed. It's a large construction project, and with the dewatering system and the removals that have to happen, the road will be closed. We're looking at a window probably July to November, and then asphalt going in prior to December.
Okay, because that's a main trunk for what we've done for Wallace, right? It will need to be addressed.
Yeah, we've considered the detour and the impacts to traffic, and feel that, yeah, it'll time out well with or without the one-way block for sure, in terms of getting traffic to the north and to the south.
That answers my questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we have the vote? All right, let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up is item 5.7.3. Council is invited to proceed with the request for improvement of the Henderson Municipal Drain. Is Mr. Richardson with us tonight?
I am, if you can hear me there, Mr. Mayor.
Wonderful. Take the floor.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Yeah, the purpose of my report here tonight is for us to consider Section 78 under the Drainage Act for the Henderson Municipal Drain. The drain was originally constructed in 1969 under a report prepared by James A. Howes, an Ontario land surveyor, under Bylaw 1132. The drain serves lots 9 to 13, concession 10 in the Wallace Ward. The Henderson drain is a tile system, consists of 5-inch up to 15-inch tile sizes. The drain's approximately
1,000 meters in length. The request for the improvement was received on January the 20th, 2022 from the owner of part lot 11, concession 10. Upon the investigation, it has been determined that the existing tile is now undersized by today's standards. During heavy rain events, the area experiences localized ponding enough to cause considerable crop damages. There's also been systematic farm drains constructed on the two farms at the top end of the drain. The drain does not provide the adequate capacity to accommodate these subsurface systems, as well as offer enough catch basins to capture the surface water. And the financial implications of this project would be a new crossing to be installed across Road 152. As per Section 26 of the Act, the road authority would be assessed at all those costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Council, questions or first comments on this matter? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 78 of the Drainage Act, proceed with the request for improvement to the Henderson Municipal Drain. Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our mover?
Yes, I sure will.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder.
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any indication, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Thank you, Mr. Couch. Again, regards to all of your team who we know are doing exceptional work. Let's turn now to item 5.8, reports from the fire department. And Jenny has been busy and her team has been busy, so we'll have a look at a couple of items from them tonight. First is item 5.8.1. This invites council to consider a draft with revisions of an earlier reviewed open air burning bylaw. And I'm going to invite North Perth Fire Chief Jenny Pape to comment. Welcome, Chief Pape.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Good evening, members of council. As you may recall, revisions to update North Perth's open air burning bylaw were introduced, in July 2021 by Fire Chief Smith. Council feedback was received at that time and incorporated into the attached version of the bylaw. In addition to incorporating previous edits to update the bylaw, the draft also introduces no burn days for urban areas within the municipality in an effort to provide a balanced approach to recreational fires. This draft proposes no recreational fires in urban areas on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, with the exception of statutory holidays when recreational fires would be permitted regardless of the day of the week. Open to comments and feedback.
Thank you, Chief Pape. A brief introduction. Council, questions or first comments? Councillor Richardson. Oh, sorry. Let me get the order right. They came in at the same time. Councillor Barnes first.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Thanks, Chief Pape. I do have a couple of really small concerns, and it's probably in general, I would surmise it as the general reading of it. It gets very confusing and sometimes a little contradictory when we're talking the difference between open air burning, fires for cooking, recreational fires, those types of things. But I noticed, like in one section, for example, I believe it's 3.1, the rule of fires, it says that you basically can't have an open fire to cook food unless you have a permit from the fire chief. And I mean, that almost seems like you're setting a bylaw up that you really can't enforce. Did you give any consideration to deliberately separating the three out instead of trying to do it as an all encompassing everything all at one time, like to separate out fires for cooking and that compared to open fire burning, which is allowed in the rural area under permit. And then of course there's the recreational bonfire type thing. The only reason I ask is because some of the guidelines seem a little misleading when it starts. People get confused about open air burning as opposed to cooking for food. Like, I mean, there are still people out there who use a container with wood in it, like I would say an approved CSA container with wood in it to cook steak or hamburgers or whatever. But when you're reading the bylaw, that may not even be allowed. But if it is in the rural area, you got to be 100 feet away. As opposed to, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it gets very convoluted down that you're trying to think, okay, what do they mean by that and all of this? So I'll wait for your comments, but it would probably be easier because when you're talking about like some of the cooking for food, you're talking propane and gas is suggested, but it's not really talking, or charcoal, but it's not really talking wood. And I know that there's a lot out there with some of the new things that are on the market actually use wood from time to time. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, fair comments, and thank you for those questions. So what we tried to do, and I was using the previous version, we've tried to separate it out into rural, urban, and then recreational. And so an open air burn is really a fire that happens in a rural ward. And so that's a larger fire, something that is not contained. So it's just basically a burn pile. And so that's what we're referring to when we talked about open air burning or open air fires, and more in the rural areas where you might be looking to get rid of if you're cleaning up tree lines, things like that. And so that's more an open air burning, as opposed to cooking fires. Cooking fires are permitted under the Ontario Fire Code, and there's not much we can do about cooking fires as long as people are being safe about it. And so those are separate then still from recreational fires. And so I can appreciate, I'm in the business and this is something that I live, breathe, and sleep. And so those terms for me are quite normal and typical, but they may not be for the average person. And I can appreciate that fully. And so recreational fires are to be smaller in size as opposed to an open air burning fire that may be much larger, typically found on a farming property. Does that help, Councillor Beans?
Well, I had put in for a supplemental, Chief Pape, if you go to 3.1, the rural fires section, and
Yes.
this is why I say it's a little bit confusing.
Sure.
The second sentence in the first paragraph says it is permitted in the rural areas for the purposes of cooking food.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, because you've differentiated now that open air burning is really a much bigger fire.
Typically, yes.
Right? Why would you not take perhaps the cooking food out of there? Just because, like I said, when I'm reading it, it becomes really confusing as to, I realize that like for a bonfire, you can do marshmallows and hot dogs and things like that, but you're really not doing that for what you consider to be technically an open air burn, right? Like that's something a little bit bigger fire. So I'm just wondering if you could just take a second look, especially at that sentence. But it also says, and I apologize, I've lost it again, where it says that in order to cook food, you need a permit. And I apologize, I had it written down.
So to have an open air burn, you must have a permit. So those are larger in size. And so that's why you must require, that's why a permit is required. Sometimes we actually go out and take a look. Today alone, we had 2 requests for burn permits come in, and those were both in rural wards. And Assistant Chief McEwen actually drove out to the sites to take a look. In both cases, we had serious concerns. One, because it was the one fire was too close to exposures, and we very possibly could have had a structure fire as a result. The other one, they were burning non-approved items. And so those fires are, that's the reason the burn permitting process basically notifies us so that we can go out and take a look and perhaps give some guidance to the homeowner to let them know what's safe and what isn't. And so that's required for larger fires. But and purposes.
I totally understand that. I remember when we developed it, and that was the reason for it. Especially, you know, when we get into hotter months and things like that, it can escape you pretty quick. I totally understand the reason for the permitting, but in one section here, and I had it written down, but you really can't highlight an iPad screen. At least not the way I have it set up here. It says that it implies that you need a permit to cook food. And I think it's getting confused.
Okay, and that's probably the second sentence there. I can say open air burning is permitted in rural areas of the municipality of North Perth for the purposes of cooking food, burning brush, approved wood products, and or leaves, provided that the fire is safe at all times. Da, 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 da. I can appreciate that the cooking food may be causing awkwardness.
Yes. Thank you.
Let me just see if I've got that right, because I think I understood where that went. I mean, generally what I heard you say, Jani, and I just want to make this clear, the bylaw seems to address that open air burning is kind of a bigger volume fire kind of thing that's allowed in circumstances. And I'm just struggling to imagine, and maybe it's because I've had no experience with this, trying to cook food over an open air fire like that has no boundaries. Maybe it's just my city background, my urban experience speaking, but I find myself wondering, in the consequence of what Councillor Barnes has said, if that cooking food piece should actually be there. Like, isn't the intent of cooking food that you probably are going to cook it over something that's maybe not an open air fire? I don't know.
In some of these fires, I don't want to misrepresent all open air burning. Some may be just a larger pile, what most people would refer to as a bonfire. And so there are individuals who do choose to cook during that experience. And so that, I believe, is why that sentence was included there. It isn't new language, but I can certainly amend it.
It strikes me that would be helpful, and maybe you sort of isolate the cooking provisions into their own clause and stipulate what they belong to and didn't belong to. I think that's what Councillor Barnes was sort of getting at too. If I'm wrong, Councillor Barnes, that's where I thought was happening there. Okay. Let's turn to.
If I may, while I worked for the province, I do recall we were cautioned not to ever basically limit a person's ability to cook food. So that was a piece, and that may be why this language was included in the bylaw, is that different cultural considerations and even the need to feed one's family. There is always a caution that we don't limit that, as long as we're safe to do so. And so that may be, I could be wrong, but that may be why that language was used originally.
Okay. Is it possible that perhaps we can just sort of separate it out as a second thought that's in the same train of explanations? Because
absolutely.
I kind of see the point. It's almost like this bylaw needs to be written like a flowchart, you know? Are you
yes.
Are you cooking or are you not cooking? That's sort of what we're getting at.
Yes. I'd be happy to amend that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councillor Richardson is next.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Thank you very much, Chief Pape, for the report. on second thought, I do happen to agree with what Councillor Behrens and Mayor Kasenberg have made mention about the cooking food, and if you'll bring that back in an amendment, that would be appreciated, because I can certainly understand the slight differences. And okay, do you need a permit to cook food or not? And maybe your in-depth knowledge of the fires and the definition of fires might not necessarily translate very well to the other folks that are having fires in their backyard. The one condition that I do have a bit of an issue with this bylaw is that I'm just wondering the no burn days. I think that that's going to be a significant issue, that it's going to turn into, number one, how does that get monitored? And I don't think it's necessarily fair to, especially when we happen to get some nice weather, to limit the people's ability to have a small contained urban fire in there, that I am not in support in any way to have it limited to the weekends only. If someone's on vacation or on shift work, we can't limit it. You can't have the only nice day of the week when you're on vacation, it happens to be a Wednesday night, and you can't happen to have a fire if you're on holidays. I don't think that that's fair. And I don't think that we need to get into a quagmire of trying to police that on, well, you had a fire on Monday night, but you can't have one tomorrow night. You can wait till Friday night. And then I think it turns into more of an administrative issue with that I don't agree with that point at all. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll offer comment quickly, Councillor Richardson. Certainly, there are parties in this community who are quite upset about the everyday, all day kind of rule of burning fires, or the availability of burning fires in urban areas. They maintain that they cannot comfortably enjoy their property or house, and they've made themselves quite known to me. I'm actually sympathetic to their cause. So, I think we have a balanced approach here. It's interesting. There probably are other balanced approaches that could be reached, but there are some folks in this community that apparently feel it's their prerogative to burn 7 days a week. And that's chasing people into closing their windows, having to up the use of air conditioning and poor air quality in their homes, as well as asthma and allergies. And that's a concern, because they're interfering with the free and rightful enjoyment of owned property by others. Chief Pape, did you have any comments on that one?
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I appreciate very much both perspectives on this. This piece was added, driven by complaints for the most part. Just for council's information, in the last 2 years, we've received 20 complaints per year, roughly, with respect to outdoor burning in our urban areas. While 20 doesn't seem a significant number, it's that's when we receive a complaint for an address. It doesn't matter how many phone calls we get for that address. So on one address, for one complaint, we may end up talking with, connecting with, visiting a site. We may have multiple visits there, and certainly multiple staff hours, including potential emergency response when a neighbor gets so frustrated that they eventually call 911. And then we are dispatching trucks out at a cost to the taxpayer. And so this is driven due to complaints. It's certainly COVID has increased our number of complaints, and that could be for a few reasons. I think people are home more, and so fire in their backyard is something that they can enjoy safely during COVID restrictions. I also think people in general are more frustrated, and so that may be driving complaints as well. So I can certainly appreciate both perspectives, and this was an attempt to balance and to offer a compromise so that everyone can have quiet enjoyment of their backyards. One couple in particular came to the fire station to visit me. They've actually thought of selling their house because they're unable to enjoy their backyard any day of the week. Basically, as soon as the weather warms, folks are out there 7 days a week. It's not just one neighbor, it's 3 or 4 neighbors. And they've moved to our community, and they do not find it an enjoyable space to live right now because of this.
Councillor Richardson, I see you put in for supplemental.
Yes, and thank you through you again. Although I can totally understand the complaints of the adjacent property owners, almost in every section of where it's sublisted into the bylaw, it basically says that burning that conflicts with the neighbor's peaceful enjoyment of the property is strictly prohibited. I think this is more of possibly coming down to more of an actual enforcement issue than a bylaw issue. I can certainly understand. Would you happen to know off the top of your head, Chief Pape, like we had 20 calls last year? What was it like when things were back in the old days, when they were normal, so to speak? Like
the good old days.
Is the good old days of 2 years ago? Was that approximately the same number consistently throughout?
So for the last 2 years, our COVID years, we've had about 20 each. Before that, it was about half. And like I said, I think those numbers are driven on a few reasons, people being home more, but also I think people are frustrated in general and complaining more in general.
Okay, thank you. But I honestly think that even though it's already listed in the bylaw that if someone is interfering with the enjoyment of their property because they're having fires every day, that's an enforcement issue. And I think that that's something that that would need to be taken up with the property owner of the said fires, needs to be taken up with, not necessarily with. I just don't think it's fair and I totally appreciate where they're coming from. I just don't think it's fair for the entire community to be limited to 3 days a week and turning into more of a administrative issue after that, for the sake of coming down to actual enforcement, whether it be police and or fire, or sending them a bill for having this repeated contact. Like once you've been warned once, then after that, you're going to get a bill. This is totally enforcement, and it doesn't need to be written into the bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson, I'll just offer a small comment on that because I do have an opinion on that one. The challenge with the use of enforcement for this, one beyond the cost, is that those neighbors then get exposed to the hostility of their neighbors who want to have the fires. And so creating blanket policy here actually sort of eases the problem without singling people out and forcing people essentially to become or wind up being called bad neighbors. And that's the challenge here. You know, some of the people who have talked to me about this issue certainly have been very nervous about calling the police or fire or bylaw enforcement because they believe that there will be repercussions that will affect their safety. Okay, why don't we move to Councillor Anstedt next, and then we can bring Councillor Richardson back in on this one. Councillor Anstedt.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and I'll just be relatively brief. I know there's a few other councillors that want to comment on this. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Thanks very much, Chief Pape, for your report, and I appreciated the phone call a few weeks ago to discuss this. My concern, and I've heard what Councillor Behrens and Councillor Richardson have said, I'm not as concerned about the enforcement piece. I think we have appropriate mechanisms in place to address that. My big concern, and maybe Chief Pape, you could speak to this, is just if we were to move forward with this is a very large change to our existing bylaw. What's your method or what's your plan on getting this rolled out in terms of education for our residents? Because I think that's going to be a key factor in getting them to understand this big change if we were to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And the public education piece is why we've brought this forward in February. So before the weather turns nice, if this is something that council agrees to, we would have to be quite proactive in our messaging to the community. Most recently, we've introduced a Facebook page, which is generating interest. We would attempt to use social media platforms as well as our contact with local media outlets. We have been working rather hard on our partnerships with the Ranch and the Banner locally. So that is something we would use. We would also be speaking with our local OPP detachment, just so that everyone is on the same page and officers would be aware of that change. Because as the bylaw sets out, 8:30 to 4:30 Monday to Friday is when someone is in the fire station, or the bylaw enforcement officer can be contacted. After that, it's the non-emergency number for the OPP that is to be utilized to voice a complaint about the bylaw. So we would be working together with OPP on this piece.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Richardson, another crack at this?
Yes, thank you so much. And through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I do appreciate previous comments about the trepidation to call on your neighbor, but that also comes down to an enforcement issue. If someone's in violation of a burn bylaw now, which is obviously in the bylaw right now, that they can be called upon. I just think it's an incredibly unfortunate situation, but I find it profoundly unfair to 95%, 98% of urban residents to limit their ability to have an outdoor fire when there are a few problem children. Basically speaking, people who don't know how to properly look after a fire or take their neighbor's courtesy into order. And I understand trying to have a blanket approach, but we're going to be limiting everyone else's ability to have a fire on a weeknight when it seems to suit them and their schedule, holidays, as I previously mentioned, in order to appease, not necessarily appease, but to basically, you're going to allow someone, if he's breaking the bylaw now, or if this person happens to be breaking the bylaw now by inconveniencing their neighbors, he's going to do it again in the future, of which is still going to need to be enforced. So, and I don't think rewriting an entire bylaw to certainly accommodate an incredibly small number, and as Chief Pape had made mention, if we're looking 10 to 20, even 10 a year, that's very, very minimal to completely change and have a profound change in the bylaw, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and we beat this up enough. So just I am in favor of everything that Councillor Richardson has said. It's ridiculous to reduce it to 2 days a week. It's going to confuse people. We've all had the same phone calls, messages, emails, whatever, and it is going to be confusing. But at the end of the day, we either have fires, police it, or we don't. But if we're moving forward with stipulating a couple of days a week, I'm not in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Chief Pape, one of the concerns that has arisen from those who have ultimately reached out to you and who have reached out to me at least, is this matter of sort of anonymity in reporting. And I think historically there's this sense that people cannot be anonymous in reporting these types of complaints. Is there something that can be worked on in that particular area so that we can sort of ease the pressure on those who are making these reports? I know that there's a desire, obviously, to validate that the complaint is a legitimate one. But at the same time, certainly in many neighborhoods, it could be any neighbor who's making the complaint about someone who's relentlessly burning and interfering with the enjoyment of property. And so is there some way that we could concept a system of anonymity or protect the identity of those who might be reporting under those complaint provisions?
Unfortunately, if something like this would proceed to charges, you have to have a complainant's name on the charge. Those are rules under the Provincial Offences Act. I can't change that.
Okay, so thank you. That clarifies my question. Anyone else have questions or comments at this point?
If I may, for council's information, we have gone ahead and sent a letter to all of the neighbors within the immediate area of the most major complaint that we received. So it was 26 houses received a letter, as well as a copy of the previous mail out, just so everybody's aware and let that larger neighborhood know that if we did receive complaints, that there are provisions under the bylaw to enforce, and the cost of an apparatus, dispatching an apparatus, is approximately $510 per hour plus taxes. So we have made them aware in that 26 house area, and so no one can say they didn't know at this point. If this doesn't move forward, and I can appreciate and I respect very much the dialogue that we had here tonight, if it doesn't move forward, it's certainly something I'd be looking for support when we do have to enforce this, because likewise we'll probably end up receiving complaints from the same people who are on the opposite side of this. this time being charged. So just having that awareness, I guess.
Thanks, Chief Pape. Just a quick question on that. In response to the 26 letters that you sent out, did you get any community input regarding?
I haven't heard a thing. Nothing.
Thank you. All right. So here we are. We have a bylaw where there's some concerns certainly about the wording. I think Chief Pape understands that we have some concerns about cooking food and how to handle that in this bylaw. So it sounds to me like there's a little bit of concern about moving forward with this bylaw as is tonight. But we also have the bigger issue of to leave in or not to leave in the changes which propose that 3 days a week, I believe, are burn-free days in the urban areas. What is council's wish on proceeding here? Because I suspect what we should do is send this back for some wording revisions and perhaps language clarification. But I think Chief Pape needs a strategic decision about council's intention around Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. So what is the will of council? Maybe I'll go through each councillor and ask how you'd like, what advice you'd give Chief Pape at this point, if that's all right. Anyone object to that process? All right, Councillor Andreessen, what advice would you give Chief Pape about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday urban burning restrictions?
Hi there. Yes, this is a tough one. I really see both sides of it. I really, really do. I think I'm going to support the current wording. And that's my feeling at this time. Thanks.
When you say current wording, you mean in this draft of the bylaw?
In the draft, in terms of the just the weekend, you know, how you're doing it on weekends and the 3-day ban. So I support the current wording.
Thank you. Councillor Anstett?
Yes, I would be in support of the current wording. Again, we're not banning fires. We're just simply limiting them. And again, I'm not trying to drag this out. I've got the phone calls. We've all got the phone calls. I'm supportive of the current wording as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Behrens is next.
Yes, I am not in support of the 3 days.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, like others have said, I'm not in favor of punishing the whole municipality over a few bad actors, so I'm not in favor of the 3 days as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and I'm quite torn on this, but I actually believe we need to be consistent across the municipality with this, so I'm not in favor of the 3-day ban.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, you've said you're not in favor of this either.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Richardson, I think we know where you stand.
Still like to say it. No, I'm not in favor, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd. I appreciate the suggestion that's come forward here to try to address the challenges which have presented themselves. However, I'm not in favor of the 3-day exemption. But back to what other councillors have suggested, it is an enforcement issue. And clearly, when we do have complaints that people are understanding the importance of that, they have to have a complaint with their name on. Hopefully there will be action on those matters and we can see the matter move forward. Thank you very much.
I think I heard most of that. You were quite quiet in those comments, Councillor Rothwell. So I think you've concluded. All right. It appears that the will of council at this point is not to proceed with restrictions that are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, based on the informal poll that I've taken at this point. So given that, then I think our direction to Chief Pape should be along the lines of address the wording concerns with regards to cooking and maybe improve the plain language capabilities of this bylaw and to remove restrictions on the dates that were added to this version because council does not support those in the majority at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that clear direction.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to the clerk here. We should have a resolution that directs Chief Pape to do that, I assume. Yeah. Okay, so the resolution should be to the effect that the council refers back to staff this bylaw for further review based on considerations of our discussion. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder for that one?
Yes, I will second that.
All right. So we have an altered resolution that's not the one that has been proposed. And any discussion or debate on this one? Right. Seeing none, let's have a vote on the altered resolution. And that is carried unanimously. All right. Chief Pape, I think you're still up. If I am following the agenda well here, I believe you have a report to council on changes emerging in the certification of firefighters. And I can advise that I did participate as head of council in a briefing given by the Ontario Fire Marshal on this very subject quite recently. So Chief Pape, if you would, give us the overview here.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. So it is a lengthier report, and so I won't read through all of it for you, but the long and short of it is that there's been a recent introduction of proposed legislation that would require firefighters of all ranks within the fire service to be certified to the job that they are performing. So for a firefighter, they would need to be certified, not just trained, but certified to NFPA standard 1001 level 2. If they are to perform interior attack, let's say, so to go inside to a building, they would have to be certified to NFPA 1001 level 2. If it's an exterior attack only, so not going outside, just fighting the fire from the outside, or not going inside, just fighting the fire from the outside, they would only be required to certify to level 2. So since 2014, when the NFPA standards were introduced in Ontario, that took us away from the Ontario firefighter curriculum. When they were introduced in 2014, the North Perth Fire Department adopted those standards early on. And so quite grateful actually that was done. And so most of our firefighters are certified to that level, and any new recruits coming on, that's the work we endeavor with them during the recruit training process. And within a year of them joining and for them to take in a probationary spot within the department. So we are already certifying to that level that would allow us to do interior attack. So I wanted to make council aware that this regulation has come up. It is being proposed. I don't see a major cost implication to the municipality because it's something that we're already doing. What I do see is that it will increase firefighter safety across the province, and it does ensure us a certain level of peace of mind, I guess, when we're assisting at mutual aid fires that our neighboring municipalities are also going to have to be certified to that same standard. So there is that baseline. This is also part of the reason we had changed dispatching was because at the time the Stratford Fire Department was not certified to the NFPA 1061 standard, which is required under this as well as NG 911 requirements. So Owen Sound Police Services, all of their dispatchers are already trained and certified to NFPA 1061. We did just have, my apologies, a fire officer course. We hosted that in North Perth, and we had 15 folks take that course. And so the next piece is to write the provincial exam. And so we have requested provincial exam testing days to take place in May. We have 2 days booked at this point. And so those days are provided free of charge through the province for them to provide the exams and the proctor. What we have to do is provide the location, and we certainly have lovely facilities to host exams in. Hopefully with COVID rules and restrictions lifting, we may be able to offer that to neighbors who don't have facilities quite like we do, or make use of facilities when they're offering that same opportunity. I also did want to bring forward some information as a community risk assessment is also required under a new regulation, and we'll have to complete a community risk assessment, as all fire departments in the province have to, by July of 2024. And part of the community risk assessment process, the community risk process is intended to help council make informed decisions about the level of service that the council chooses. It is always up to a council to determine the level of service. And so just wanted to introduce this as basically as a starter for that conversation, that again, it is council's decision as to what level of we offer. So if we're going to provide interior attack, if we're going to only provide exterior attack, that'll be up to you to decide through that process. So I brought forward NFPA 1720 response standards in my report, and so that gives you an idea. Again, you do not have to adopt these standards, it's up to you, but this is an industry best practice, is NFPA 1720, and it shows based on population density what the recommended minimum staffing level is to fight a fire. This is supposed to be for a typical single family dwelling. And so because our population density, as it continues to grow, already in the Withdrawal, and I would think probably the Atwood, the town of Atwood itself, they would fall into that urban demand zone category. So just to bring that forward, there'll be further information in the next year and a bit as we go through that process. Also, to bring to council's attention that the current complement of the North Perth Fire Department has 52 active members due to a number of retirements that we did expect, and minimum recruitment activity during COVID times. As you've likely heard, we have just closed up, or I guess we will at midnight today, close up a bit of a recruitment drive. I'm very pleased with the applications we've received. And ideally, we'll be looking, I don't think it's going to happen in this recruitment drive, but we would be looking to bring that complement to a total of 70, 30 in Listowel, 20 in each of Atwood and Moncton stations. So the financial implications based on the certification regulation, I don't believe there will be additional costs. I've had some great conversations with neighboring fire chiefs and fire departments who feel strongly that we can offer much of this training in-house, and the third-party training that we have offered at North Perth in the last couple of years is something that we have budgeted for. So there shouldn't be an increase to our budget based on this certification requirement. And I'm certainly open to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Chief Pape. Any questions or first comments on this matter? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of that, so let's consider the resolution that's been suggested, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received this report for information. I think we should elaborate which report this is. Right? The name of this report, sorry, let me go back to describe here, is Firefighter Certification Report. So the resolution should read that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth received the Firefighter Certification Report for information. Councillor Duncan, will you serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And Chief Pape, we have one more from you. According to my notes here, the 5.8.3, council is asked to confirm some changes to the process of securing and maintaining vulnerable sector checks for the North Perth Fire Department. Please explain, Chief Pape.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. So as the report lays out, we are looking to increase the frequency at which we conduct vulnerable sector searches for our North Perth Fire Department personnel. Currently, firefighters submit a vulnerable sector check before being hired. That's one of the conditions of hire. And so what we're looking to do here is to have a vulnerable sector search performed every 2 years, and in the off year, that firefighters provide an offense declaration saying that nothing has changed in their criminal history during that time frame. I did bring this report and the policy, the policy to the HR committee. Questions?
If the HR committee had advanced it further to council's full consideration. Any questions, yes, comments on this? Okay, seeing none at this point, I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the proposed criminal reference check policy for the North Perth Fire Department. Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you be our seconder?
I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Chief Pape, busy night for you. Thank you very much. Continue the good work that you and your department are doing on our behalf. We appreciate it very much.
My privilege.
Next, then, we're at item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees? And the usual process applies in terms of requesting the floor. I'd be happy to hear from you. Anyone with comments? Not seeing any. I will report that participation levels in the coldest night of the year fundraising event were substantial. And I believe the report that I saw from the United Way this morning suggested that we were about 90% to the goal that was set for North Perth, somewhere in the 68,000 range, which was a very good showing for that event, and appreciative to all the organizers in our community who worked on that to raise funds for the United Way's disbursement to homelessness and housing initiatives and some other issues that they have in our community to support our community. Anyone further? Do also take note that today was sort of a grim anniversary of the arena roof collapse, the Withdrawal Memorial Arena, and certainly I saw some prevalent information encouraging us to again, and we should ever remember, for those of us in this community, it was a pivotal event in the life of the community, that occasion. So. Okay, let's move to item 7. For item 7, we have one item of correspondence that staff has advised warrants some further action. For item 7.1, we have a request from an organization, It Takes a Village, that would allow use of the patio that fronts our library property in downtown Listowel by said organization for the purposes of an outdoor food marketplace. This request invites periodic use every other Saturday from May until October, from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. Councillors, if you have comments or suggestions for action, what are they? CAO Snell wishes to offer some commentary. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. My comments will be brief, but I just have a couple of comments. One, I know the property is ours, but certainly the library has really maintained the management of the property. So I wonder if this is a request that we should, one, pass by the library board for their comment and review. And second, One of the concerns I have in reading the request is not so much the waiving of the $400 fee, but our transit trader bylaw requires all outdoor vendors to carry $2 million of liability insurance, and this request is asking us to cover it in our municipal liability insurance. And I think we should refer this to finance for a comment from our insurer regarding that portion of the request. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Snell. So we've been given some staff advice here. Councillor Andreessen, it looks like you have a comment or some questions.
Yes, thank you through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I was happy to see that our staff are wanting to look into this further around insurance. I also, want staff to perhaps take a look at some other elements to this request. So, for instance, our economic development committee has in the past talked a little bit about hosting markets in North Perth. And I know that there is interest of other possible vendors who might want to do something like that. So I guess this could really require some additional consideration and review, because the Economic Development Committee has stated that there really isn't staff to monitor a market at this time. And so that is of some concern. And then if we allow one vendor to participate, then we're setting a precedent that others can't when we don't have staff to monitor this type of event. Most municipalities who have markets of this nature, they do have staff supporting it all the time. So that's something for consideration in terms of, coming back with a report. See, and I also, if this was going to be a market vendor situation, and we did waive the fee, it does set precedent as well. So something again to be included in a report for consideration. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we have staff suggesting that a little more attention to this should be paid perhaps by staff and by the library and its board. And Councillor Andreessen, it sounded to me like you were supporting the notion of referring this to staff for further workup. So are you prepared to make that a motion?
Yes, I would make that motion for staff to come back with report investigating the possibilities of this request for a small market at the library.
Okay, thank you. Council, I'll sort of open this up. Do I have a seconder to support Councillor Andreessen's motion? I'm not seeing anything there. Okay,
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Richardson.
My apologies. And I do believe that Councillor Andreessen's, and thank you through Councillor Andreessen is stating that maybe having paused for second thought, I do have some significant concerns with the insurance, the liability aspect of it. And I do have concerns, and it sets a kind of a dangerous precedent for waiving the fee. We don't really get into that. As noble as what the cause is and as well-intentioned, I totally understand that, but that's an incredibly slippery slope, and especially if we're looking into something that is market available, and like Leanne or Councillor Andreessen had made mention of, we've got basically big ideas out there to really promote Farmgate, that I also think that that's where we've got to look at also our local produce, if it's all going to be purchased locally. But I think there's a little more information that needs to be known here. And I do understand that possibly the library could be a good location, but the liability has me a little concerned, and I'm just wondering if that's the best location for it. And then we're also cornering the market for exclusivity for that to prohibit anyone else from actually either joining that market or a different one. So I do think that staff need to maybe look at those. And as far as Councillor Andreessen's motion for taking it back for staff referral and to look at all these points that we've discussed, I would second that motion.
Thank you very much. I was thinking I was in an irregular situation, one that I have been in unfortunately before. But we have a mover and seconder for Councillor Andreessen's motion that we refer this to staff for further investigation around the attributes that have been described in this conversation with council. So motion on the floor, comments, discussion, debate at this point? Councillor Behrens.
Yes, the only one thing I think staff should also consider is, you know, we do many things and work hand in hand with some local charities. And depending on what they may come back with, my concern is, to my knowledge, this is not a legal charity. And I think that could create a little bit of an issue if there was, and that's probably why they're asking for the insurance and the liability insurance and all of that. But I am concerned to give any use of our property to any group that isn't a registered charity, even with a number of conditions, and there would have to be a number of conditions in order for this to happen on our property. So I just have that little bit of concern to really know exactly what we're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Behrens. Anyone further discussion or debate on the motion to refer this to staff? There have been a number of key points. I'm trusting the team has documented those to support the resolution. Klein is nodding her head, so we've got that in place. Anyone else want to make a comment at this point? All right, let's have the question. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us then to bylaws. All right, item 8 on our agenda. So for item 8.1, council is invited to finalize the corporation's work on the improvements on the Wilson Municipal Drain by providing third reading to the provisioning bylaw. Are there any questions about this matter before we consider this one as a vote? All right, council, I have a resolution that reads as follows then, that bylaw number 2-2022 being a bylaw to provide for drainage works Wilson Municipal Drain be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover on this one.
I so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstett, will you be our seconder here?
Yes, I would second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is item 8.2. Look at the paper here. Oh my. Okay, as item 8.2, council is invited to promulgate a subdivision agreement with Dahlmich Holdings related to a subdivision in Atwood. Are there any questions about this matter before we consider this? I'm not seeing any questions posed, so let's have the resolution that bylaw number 45-2021 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a subdivision agreement with Dahlmich Holdings Limited be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Behrens, Nicole, need to be our mover for that one?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on that one? Okay, we're not seeing any, so let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We're now at item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion? Okay, we're not seeing anything. Okay, so that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? The usual rules apply to get our attention. Anyone with further comment? We're not seeing any. So that brings us to agenda item number 11. This evening, we have no matters for consideration in a closed session meeting at council. That, of course, means that for agenda item 12, we have some notice work to deliver to the community and into this public session of the meeting because we did not hold a closed session meeting. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I have the draft for a confirmatory bylaw number 36-2022, which reads as follows: that bylaw number 36-2022 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed. And the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I think we're directing to Councillor Johnston. Will you be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our seconder on this one?
I will second that motion. Thank you.
And of course, it's noted into the record that we have some who have indicated potential pecuniary interests. So they will not be voting on this. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we should see 6. And so we see 6, and that is carried. Thank you. And that brings us to the moment of adjournment. Councillors, we have completed the deliberations and taken action on the matters that did come before us tonight. I have a motion to adjourn, which reads as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 10:17 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, March 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. And I call on Deputy Mayor Kellum to be our mover for this one.
Yes, I will make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was non-debatable, so let's have that. And that is carried. Council, that means we will meet again for our next regular meeting, again using digital enabling technologies on Monday, March 7th, 2022. This meeting is adjourned. Good meeting and have a good night.